Welcome, everybody. You are in the right place if you're here for a collaborative teach-in between LA Forward Institute, LA Voice, and the Our LA Coalition, of which LA Voice and LA Forward Institute are a part. We also have, because this is sponsored by the RLA Coalition, some staff members here from AAPI Equity Alliance and Catalyst California as well. In a moment, I'll have people say some quick hellos for folks who are helping out with the call. But you're signing up for a conversation that is just the beginning of much more work around this thing called Measure G that we as LA County voters approved in 2024. And there's been a task force that's been at work already, building things out like an ethics commission, and now are building things out like this position of an elected executive that we've never had before in LA County. So we're here to share with you, how does that task force work, the current structure for it? What is this new elected county executive? We just want to make sure we level the playing field on what we think we know and what we might not know about this. We'll talk about separation of powers in a way, because there is currently a county executive. It's just not elected. And so, like, what are the different powers between these two different county executive roles, one of which will be elected? And then what are the different decision points that this task force that has been tasked with helping to implement Measure G, what are the decision points for the task force as they figure out what this elected county executive will look like, feel like, and sound like for residents in LA County? And because there's a task force, that means we have the opportunity to engage as members of the public. So you'll learn more about how you can engage. In fact, we hope that you do, and we'll share a little bit about how you can follow up with any next steps. Now, throughout this process, we're going to keep this link alive. You can see that it's tinyurl.com/measureG-QA. And it's because those questions that you're listing under things you want to know, you can keep adding questions into that question document, because at the end of this, we will return to that same document. And at that same document, we will look at your questions and see what we haven't yet answered through the conversation that we're able to answer as well. And sometimes the answers are things we might not know on this call, which means we got to go do some exploration, some organizing, some digging, and figuring it out with you all. Well, that's where we're headed. I'd love to introduce the people who put tonight's conversation together from various organizations and people who are powering Our LA Coalition. We'll start with Jackie Koto. Jackie, want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Jackie Cotto here, representing LA Forward. It's good to see some of you guys in this space. And I'm going to be covering some other sections of the agenda, along with my colleague, V. Go ahead, V, and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Viveka Ramazumder. I go by V. I'm the lead organizer in the Pasadena-Altadena area at LA Voice. Excited to be here. Good to see some of our LA Voice folks here, Ebony, Robin, other folks. Glad to be here. And I'll pass it to Alton.
Hey everyone, nice to be here with you all. My name is Alton. I'm legal counsel with AAPI Equity Alliance, working with the Asian American Pacific Islander community here in the county, and we are very interested and excited about this conversation. I'm going to pass it over to Ale.
Good evening, everybody. Alejandra Ponce de Leon, she, her, with Catalyst California and representing also the RLA Coalition. So excited to be here.
Cool. And before we pass things off and get things started, again, I just want to put into the chat box one more time for now. We're going to keep doing that because new people will be entering. We want people to have access to these links. But I'm actually going to share. I meant to put two links in there. I put the same link in twice. The link that you see in there twice is the link where you can continue to put in questions. Again, there's a column there that says, what you want to know, etc. But I am going to share another link that is different. And for anybody here who knows, like, you will just need to hop early or something, but you'll want to follow up, right? To follow up and just share this now. We're going to share it again later. You don't need to get distracted with it now, but we created a form, like a survey, for folks who know that they want to get engaged with Measure G stuff, and you're just not going to be here until the very end. And so you can fill out that survey to let us know that, yep, like here's how I want to get involved with Measure G stuff, but I gotta hop. Otherwise, you'll get it later. And I will pass to our amazing facilitators now to help us learn more about
Yeah.
Measure G.
Thanks, Godfrey. And thank you, everyone. We will be taking the mic later on, but wanted to also give a shout out to Alejandra and Alton, who will be answering some of your questions on that link on that Google Sheet. So keep your questions coming as we go along. If you have any questions, just drop in there and they'll help answer as we go along. I wanted to start off with a quick, very brief recap on Measure G. If you haven't seen the recap, the Measure G 101 presentation that we did back in February, there's a link here and a QR code that you can visit and go back and look at that. That's goes more in depth on the whole Measure G of LA County. But basically, the Board of Supervisors, they proposed this charter amendment back in July of 2024. And the reform was approved by voters November 2024. So from that, we started to have this movement of now we're going to reform our LA County governance. That hasn't been done in over 100 years. I believe it's over 174 years. And so this is a great opportunity for us to get involved and shape this new governance for our county. There was a task force body that it's known for the GRTF. They are a member of 13 of them, and they are moving in and implementing all of the provisions that are on this Measure G. So on this slide, you can see that there are 5 main provisions, and within them, they go deep in the weeds, and it gets very complicated and more in depth. But we have already done the budget oversight. That was already approved back in February of this year. The reform of that budget, the way the budget is presented to the Board of Supervisors. Now there's a different way of how that's being done with community input and a space for community to get engaged on that. Then just recently in April, May, the new ethics compliance, a whole new systems for having an ethics compliance that was created because we've never had an independent ethics compliance before. There's a commission that's being created as well. That was approved by the board back in May. And then we are now moving into the elected executive creation of a newly position that basically is going to be like the second largest powerful elected position in the state. That's how it's being seen. And so it is very important for us to have a say, have our voices heard, and have input on how this position is being shaped. And then after that, the task force is going to start working on expanding the supervisorial positions because we're going from 5 to 9, and then the creation of a charter commission. So that's the main timeline right now that we are. Again, right now, this presentation for today, we wanted to talk to you about the elected position because it's the one that it's hot hot right now on the burners, and the task force and everyone is talking about it, and it's being deliberated right now as we speak. Before I dive in, because the structure of the LA County is going to change, I want to show you a little bit of what the current structure of the Board of Supervisors is, what that looks like, because that's going to shift when this new position, and even when they expand, starts moving forward. But right now, the current structure of the Board of Supervisors, they hold the combined executive, legislative oversight of the entire county. They have that authority at the moment. They are responsible for introducing motions, orders, and any charter amendments. They are also responsible for the direction of the policy. They guide the policy, and they have oversight of all the county departments. They are responsible for the labor negotiations and assign staff to lead labor negotiations. And they are also responsible for appointing members to commissions and boards that exist within the LA County. They approve the budget. They review and approve the county budget. That's over $50 billion. That's with a B. So that's the current structure right now with the supervisor. They hold all these powers, and that is shifting. I have a question for you guys, if you guys can enter in the chat, but who here knew that we have an existing chief executive officer? Because for the longest time, before I went into government relations, I myself didn't know. But we do have the current structure, we do have a chief executive officer. And this role right now, the way it's currently set, is that they are responsible for many things, but it is an appointed position. This position is elected by the board, and it's not elected by the voters. They are the central liaison, meaning they serve as a link between all county departments and the board. They oversee the day-to-day operations county-wide, anything that has to do with the management. They provide county-wide strategic planning and the coordination of that. They direct major initiatives, any efforts such as the homelessness initiatives, any health programs and such initiatives. They are the lead for an emergency response and preparedness. They also manage major capital projects, and they have oversight of the county's $50+ billion. They also oversee 38 departments and labor relations for 64 bargaining units. So this individual is responsible for that as the structure currently stands. The new elected county executive. This is a new position that is mandated by Measure G. And so it's going to shift the way the Board of Supervisors responsibilities are, as well as the current elected non-elected CEO, but appointed CEO. The office, there will be an office that will be established, and the first elected executive will be completed in 2028. There will be a countywide election, meaning that we as voters will vote the candidate that runs for this position. There are no term limits, and that is set by the state of California's constitution. They will hold executive and administrative powers of the county. So that's going to be their executive authority. And they will have veto power. They may veto ordinances. They may veto resolutions and budget items. However, the vetoes can be overturned by 2/3 votes of the Board of Supervisors. So now they will have the department oversight. Well, that'll still stay within the position. They will continue to manage the county departments and the day-to-day operations, with the exception of the board itself, the sheriff's department, the assessor department, the DA, and the county legislative analyst. They will also be responsible for carrying out policies and directives that are adopted by the Board of Supervisors. They will be responsible to prepare and submit the annual budget to the Board of Supervisors, and they will still be responsible for leading any emergency response efforts on behalf of the county. So these are the new responsibilities, how they are merging into this new elected county executive position, which is why we feel that, as you can see, as LA County being so huge, and it doesn't compare to any other county in the country, how this role is considered a second largest, most powerful position in the state. So a quick look of how the separations of powers, what it's going to look like between this elected county executive versus the Board of Supervisors. As you can see, again, just really quickly, the executive and administrative powers, they will assume a lot of those administrative powers that the board used to have, currently still has. They will fulfill the duties of the county chief administrative officers, which is another position that they work really closely with the Board of Supervisors right now, but they will assume those duties. And again, they will appoint and remove county department heads, but that will be subject to board confirmation. The budget still stands within them with the veto could be overridden by the board, the daily administrations, and the emergency response efforts. Now, what that leaves for the Board of Supervisors now is that they still retain all legislative and quasi-judicial authority, such as the power to draft and pass ordinances. So the board will retain that. They will appropriate and authorize all county funds. They will establish internal organizational rules and committees and procedures. And they will oversee the legislative analyst and the clerk of the board. They will have authority for lawsuits, like authorized lawsuits, with concurrence by the county executive and by 2/3 vote of the board if it's opposed. So these are like a preview of what the separation of powers is going to be from what we currently have, what's going to shift, and what it's going to look like. Let's see. Let's see. So here I wanted to share that the task force, the GRTF task force, they are working really hard to navigate all these different changes. They are grappling with certain decision points. Again, just going more in depth on what those separation of powers are going to look like, because separation of powers, the way I showed you, looks very like clean and bullet pointed, but it's very complicated when you think about, how you're going to envision what an entire organizational chart is, and mapping out those relationships between the elected executive, the supervisor, all the departments, and how all of the different commissions are going to be impacted, how the potential management structures are going to look like, coordinating all of that, and the staffing for the future office of the elected executive. Where is the staff going to go from with this department to the other? I mean, it becomes very complicated. So these are like decision points that the GRTF, the task force, is grappling with, and they're discussing and having conversations. The legislative analyst position, there's questions about, is there going to be a transitional office? What about the future legislative process? What is that going to look like? Should we have a policy committees now? What about the budget director? There's a new budget director position. We just had the budget reform, and that was adopted in February. But now, what is that going to look like moving forward when the new executive starts? What is that going to look like? What is the whole process going to look like? Because there's conversation and talks about, will the elected executive change some things, or the timeline that's already been established? So all these questions are being asked within the task force. They are doing their research. They are talking to experts. They are having a lot of folks, speakers come in that are offering a lot of advice and presentations, so that they can come into a decisions about all these different points that they are discussing. So with all that said, the task force, the 13-member task force, they have a subcommittee. It's called the Elected Executive Ad Hoc, where they do deliberate on the recommendations that they're going to put forth. And so they have a target timeline on what that looks like, which is coming up fast. So between June and July this month, they have been having all these conversations. And they'll continue to have these conversations this month as well. So these are points of us where we can kind of listen in to the conversations, call in and offer any input. But they plan on deliberating to the full task force between August 12th and August 26th, where the ad hoc will present the recommendations to the full task force and deliberate on that. And when they deliberate, they go into deep conversations and ask questions, and they go back and forth and they vote. But they want to make sure that the full vote of all the final recommendations are voted by on the September 9th meeting, so that the goal is to have those recommendations go to the Board of Supervisors on September 29th. And that's when the Board of Supervisors, we think that the Board of Supervisors would then also look at those recommendations and vote themselves. Because at the end of the day, the Board of Supervisors are the ones who have the final say on which recommendations move forward. We saw recently when it came to the ethics, with the ethics compliance process, that they can change recommendations and vote. They can offer changes there and live. So with this elected executive, it will probably be the same thing. But the goal is for the task force is targeting that their full recommendations to go to the board by the September 29th Board of Supervisor meeting. So that's kind of like where we are right now. And when we think about those dates come fast, and where we as a coalition, as RLA and the community, where we can have an opportunity to plug in and give input. And so with that said, I'm going to hand over the mic to V, who will touch on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie. Can you advance? Okay. So this might seem like everything is set in stone, right? We laid out like what the previous, what the appointed CEO looks like, and then we talked about what the elected position is going to look like. These are specifications that were written into Measure G. However, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to engage, to continue to shape the process, to continue to shape what the actual elected county executive is going to look like. I want to actually answer a question that was in the chat first, because I think it's going to be really important to understand the opportunities to engage as I talk about these for the next few minutes. So someone asked about the Government Reform Task Force. How are they appointed? Who are they? So I sent a link in the chat. It's 13 appointed members. The task force is comprised of 13 appointed members. 5 of those members were appointed directly by supervisors. And then there are 3 members who were nominated by labor organizations. So by LA County Federation of Labor, one by SEIU Local 721, and then one by Coalition of County Unions. And then there were 5, and then there were 5 at-large members, and so that means general applications that were not appointed members or nominated members, and that those final 5 positions were selected by the people who had been appointed by the board members to serve on the task force. And so that's the composition of the board right now, and that is who is been spending a lot of time, putting a lot of work into the Measure G process. And so that is who you're, when you engage with Measure G, when you engage with the elected CEO position, that is who you're going to be giving public comment in front of. So I wanted to start by asking, can you give me a quick emoji if you've ever given public comment before in front of a government body? Nice. We actually have a few members of the task force with us, so that's really exciting. They can actually look at the document that we shared, and it'll that describes like what are the things that you have questions about, what are the things that you want to know more about. So that's great. Okay, give me an emoji if you've never given public comment before. Or do we just all have a bunch of nerds here? I love it. Okay, so I want to share a little bit about the opportunities that we'll have to engage over these next few months. Okay, so first is on the left side of the slide, you'll be able to see like how the newly created county CEO role under Measure G is being shaped and who is shaping that role. So we have the closed ad hoc committees, and so as Jackie mentioned, this is a smaller group, a subset of people from the Government Reform Task Force who are tasked with really getting into the nitty-gritty of what the county CEO position is going to look like. And there are these ad hoc positions for the Ethics Commission and for the budget and for the different parts of Measure G. They're like really getting into the weeds of this. The thing about the ad hoc committee meetings is that they're not public. They're not subject to the Brown Act, public, and so just given the size and that they're deliberations and not decisions happening there. And so because they're closed, we don't always know what's happening there. But that there still are opportunities for us to engage those task force members. And the second body, or the larger body, is the Government Reform Task Force meetings. So those are the meetings that happen every other Wednesday for the most part. You can attend virtually or in person. And then there's the Board of Supervisors, who, as Jackie mentioned, are the final decision-making authority on this. So they're the ones that'll actually pass the final proposal. And so I want to go over some of the ways that you can engage this process right now. So remember, this is going to be the most powerful elected role in the county, second most powerful elected role in the state. And so, we want to make sure that our voices are being heard. So the first way that you can engage is by attending the GRTF meetings. And so, like I mentioned, the meetings are on Wednesdays, typically every other Wednesday. And you can help us take notes. So members of RLA, we've been tracking the meetings, trying to understand like what conversations are coming up. So you can help us take notes, track recurring themes, map power dynamics, understand, are there folks that we think we should talk to that we think would really be empathetic to the concerns that we're bringing up, and help identify who is influencing the conversation. You can give public comment at these meetings. And so we frequently gave public comment as RLA at the meetings after we read a proposal that the task force had put out. We frequently gave public comment saying, we support this, we recommend something different. You can submit written public comment on policy recommendations written by the task force. And so something that RLA spent a lot of time doing is putting together letters with our reflections and our positions that we wanted the task force to consider. And that's something that you can do as well. And I have to say that through many of the GRTF meetings, RLA was one of the most consistent and active bodies that was present in the space. And so I think that, this is such an important position, and making sure that we have even more people who are contributing to the conversation is important. And the GRTF members we're really taking what we brought to the table to mind when crafting proposals. You can also set up one-to-one meetings with the GRTF members through RLA or on your own, especially ad hoc members, to share what matters to us. So remember, the ad hoc meetings are closed. That's also sometimes where the meat of the recommendations and work happen. So reaching out and saying, I would love to talk to you and share what is important to me about this position, what I'm most concerned about, is another way to engage. You can also think about other creative ways to engage, like using social media, op-eds, other public education events like this to raise awareness about this process. A lot of people don't know what Measure G is. A lot of people don't know that the elected CEO, elected county executive position is currently being discussed. But more than that, I think a lot of people don't realize that there are opportunities for community to influence that process and to be a part of shaping that process. I think a lot of times it feels like, folks in government are making decisions for us. But this process, the purpose of Measure G was to help create accountability and government transparency. Um, the task force is a body that's trying to do that, and then the public comment periods and the other opportunities to engage really give us the opportunity to try and make sure that our voices are being heard at every step of the way. And then another and final way, there's other creative ways to engage, but another way I'd suggest engaging is meeting with the Board of Supervisors to explain community priorities, since the board has the final vote. I want to reiterate that the GRTF is an advisory body, so it shapes recommendations, but the Board of Supervisors still makes the final decision. While we have seen previously that the Board of Supervisors has actually been pretty good at adopting the recommendations directly that came out of the GRTF, what we saw during the last process with the Ethics Commission was that there are still opportunities for board members to submit motions that amend what the proposal that the GRTF submitted look like in ways that don't match our intent or maybe in like what the proposal was that was submitted by the GRTF. So the example I want to give for why engaging in this process is so important comes from that experience. So RLA spent a lot of time advocating through the Ethics Commission process. And one thing that we spent a lot of time, we really uplifted, is that we pushed against the Ethics Commission having appointees from the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Department. There are some people on the task force that agreed with us. There are other people that thought that the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Department should have had an appointed seat on the Ethics Commission. But we said no, we believe that we don't want those two positions to have appointed powers on the Ethics Commission. When the final GRTF proposal went through to the Board of Supervisors, it did not include it reflected our suggestions as well. There was no appointing power for the district attorney and the sheriff's department. However, one of the supervisors made a motion, and the motion included giving the DA's office and the sheriff's department appointing powers for the Ethics Commission. And it also reduced the amount of at-large seats from, I think, 4 or 3 to 2. And so that was an opportunity that we had to engage in the final process as well. So we met with the supervisors, we submitted public comment, and we said, we've been through this entire process. What we've heard from our communities and what we consistently brought to the table, and what the task force had recommended, was that these two positions should not have appointing power. And ultimately, through our continued advocacy, including our continued advocacy at the Board of Supervisors phase, we were able to help get those two, the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Department, we were able to get that motion defeated so that they don't have appointing power on the final Ethics Commission. So this is like an example of why community engagement is so important, and why tracking the process is so important, and why going to these meetings on Wednesdays is important. Like, we know that community members were showing up and saying, we don't want this, and we were able to bring this to the Board of Supervisors. And when we were meeting with the supervisors at the end of the process, the first thing they asked is, you're talking to us now, but did you show up to the GRTF meetings when they were having these public forums? And we were like, yes, we did, actually. We're not just showing up now, we've been engaged through the whole process. And that gave us a lot of credibility for showing up to the supervisors and saying, we're just being consistent with what we've been saying all along. So I really want to highlight the fact that organizing matters at every stage. It's going to matter, this is such an important role, and there's a lot of opportunity to shape what it ultimately looks like. And so making sure that we're staying engaged at the level of the task force, discussions, making sure we're engaged in monitoring when the supervisors end up voting on this is super important. Next slide. Okay, so the next thing I just want to mention is another opportunity to engage, and this does not have to do with the county CEO position, elected CEO position. This is actually a separate position, but we wanted to, a separate opportunity, but we wanted to raise this because the deadline is coming up and it's part of the Measure G process. So the Independent Ethics Commission is now accepting applications from community to serve on the Ethics Commission. So basically, this is expected to, this body serves as an independent oversight body for the county. And so it oversees campaign finance and enforces campaign finance laws, lobbying, government ethics, looks at issues formal opinions, and makes final decisions following administrative hearings and imposing penalties where authorized. And the Ethics Commission will be comprised of 3 appointed members that include someone from the GRTF will initially nominate, and that nomination will eventually go to the county executive, and then the chair of the Board of Supervisors and the county assessor. But then the next 4 members are going to be at-large members of the public. And so there's going to be there's a public recruitment process happening right now. So like our communities could be a part of this ethics commission, could sit on this ethics commission. And I included over here some information that the nominee should be broadly representative of the public, and that outreach is happening to underrepresented folks. And I actually wanted to direct to Brian, who raised his hand, in case I misstated something.
No, that was an accident.
Oh, great.
But
Okay.
I do want to promote. Hi, everyone. Brian, I am one of the task force members that we are actively recruiting. Please apply. We are looking to make sure that the county is represented and that it isn't just the same folks that end up on these commissions. So if it's something that you feel you have the skills and the want to, please do apply. So it's this is an open process, and thank you, Ali, for this.
I want to add that what V was saying is that we advocated for 4 at-large positions to be in this commissions, so that folks like you that are here listening could apply. So we did win. We did have that as a win, whereas 3 are appointed, but 4 are from the public. So please apply.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much. So again, this is another way to engage, and we really hope that some of you apply, and the applications for the Ethics Commission are due July 26th. Move forward, please. All right. And so now we want to take you back to that sheet that we had from the beginning, and there's a second tab, and we have some more to think about. We want to ask you a couple questions, like what improvement or changes would you like to see in county government with the new elected county executive? And then the second question is, what do you need in place to feel confident that the county executive is listening to and responsive to your needs? And again, we're lucky here. We're grateful to have task force members here who are going to be able to see what you're populating in real time. And we also hope that these are things that you'll take to task force meetings in the future. So I'm just going to give you like a few minutes to start thinking through things on the sheet, and we're going to have opportunities to engage with this in the future. Just wanted to thank the task force members again, those of you who are here, and yeah, everyone for attending and for participating and contributing your thoughts and ideas. Does anybody want to come off mute and just share 1 or 2 thoughts that you have that you might not be putting in the chat? Leah?
I put this on the forum.
Go ahead.
And ever since I heard about Measure G, I've sort of, been frantically praying that there would be some way to get money out of this election, because it's such a powerful position. And, the nightmare of our Senate race and the nightmare of our governor race is going to reproduce itself. And it's not going to be at all representative of people of LA County if we don't have election reform. And I know there are problems with, all sorts of, ranked choice voting may have its problems, star voting, democracy vouchers, but it's so much better than what we have. So that's the thing I'm really, kind of stuck with me. And I think we got a presentation from Lindsay Horvath's office at the local Dem Club. And I talked to one of Lindsay's aides about this, but I haven't come back to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Leah. Anybody else? Thanks, Leah, for modeling. Thanks for those who are contributing to the activity. And let's move on to Godfrey. Oh, it looks like Isaiah's hand is raised, so we'll get to Isaiah, and then we actually are going to have questions at the end. I think we'll be able to get to that in a couple minutes, if that's okay. If you have a thought you want to share that related to the prompt. Okay, great. Go ahead, Godfrey.
Cool. Well, everybody is writing in the second tab of the document that we put into the chat box. You see folks are putting improvements or differences that they would like to see, or what you'd like to need in place to feel confident in the elected county executive listening and responsive to your community's needs. I would love to go back to the PowerPoint. And I've been putting this in the chat box throughout the call, but we are asking folks to sort of identify themselves if you would like to continue this conversation beyond today. We said at the very beginning of this would be the beginning of a conversation, and it's because there is much more work to be done. And so one particular step you can take without signing up with us or anything is you can go check out a Measure G task force meeting yourself. They are every couple of Wednesdays, depending on the month. It doesn't quite follow an exact pattern, but every couple of Wednesdays. And so the next one is Wednesday, July 22nd. That's next week at 5 p.m. It's in the San Fernando Valley. So you can go there or you can tune in virtually. We can put in the website again for the Measure G task force for folks who want to keep up with how to engage with them. You just put that in the chat box now. If you aren't able to make it to the task force or tune in to get a sense of what it's like to hear the deliberation, participate in the deliberation, there are also community forums intentionally set up by the task force to get community feedback. Our hope is to send people to those community forums, and we will act in all the ways that Vi talked about earlier, even outside of the structures provided to us by the task force. We think that the most engaged public doesn't even have to rely on the institution set up for us. Like, let's just do it. And so we are interested in figuring out who amongst the folks here would like to continue to have more Measure G conversations. And so there is a form that we put there via QR code or the tiny URL of the chat box, where if you fill it out, it's a simple Google form. You can identify the things that are most interesting to you and how you kind of see yourself engaging with Measure G. Are you an advocate? Do you want to figure out strategy pieces? Do you really want to dig into some of the weeds? Do you just want to help us take notes? So you can see Jackie's putting up the form, and you can see that you can just check off all of the above boxes of ways you might be interested in Measure G. The questions we ask are simply to get a sense of, what we got to get back to you, right? If you're saying that you want to get in touch. So we want to be able to get back in touch. And then the zip code piece is, where are we representing in the county? The county's huge. And we want to get a sense of where folks who are most interested are coming in from. So at this juncture, as Vi was mentioning, again, we want for you all to continue engagement if you're able, but we have 10 minutes now to just revisit the Q&A document that we had shared earlier. And so I think we're going to share it on screen again. And you can see that in real time, where it says what you want to know, people put in questions. And underneath those questions, we've had during the conversation in real time, people answering the questions. And actually, I know there's a box here that's sort of been dimmed out. And I'm gonna undim the box in a moment so that people can also just type in things that you feel like you learned from this conversation as well. But let's revisit some of the things that you all mentioned that you had questions about. There we go. So you can just type in things you learned in that fourth column. People asked about how they will engage with council members. Remember, this is this county, not just LA City, county. Theoretically, I suppose if the LA City folks had interest in engaging with this county piece, they could. And it is just this piece of the county. It's 1 out of 88 cities in the county. So I suppose all city council members could and should engage with Measure G in the county and the task force. But you see a response there. Will they listen? How will they listen to community engagement? I think that's part of us trying to organize ourselves here. Why does the role exist? Because Measure G, you all said so. Some of us did. A little more than 50% of us did. What will they do versus supervisors? We did have a slide for that. And I think, we were recording this so we can revisit and make sure people have the slides available as well after this. Are there supervisors who weren't happy about this? Not everyone supported Measure G on here, and then voters passed it. So voters did pass it at the end of the day. Oversight, that is part of what the task force has discussed. If you have opinions about oversight, that is why we might need to show up to the task force, meet with folks, etc., to make sure that we feel good about the type of oversight and checks and balances are in place. If you want to scroll down, Jackie. Accountability, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Like, this is our moment right now. We said we wanted this, or maybe other people said they did on behalf of us. And so now is our moment to figure out, well, this thing is going to happen. This thing is happening in 2028, which means people will start running for this thing maybe by the end of this year, right? Like, that's how people run for big positions for 2 years, right? And so we need these rules in place now. That's why the task force is like working on these things right now to figure out what are all the different checks and balances, what are the accountability measures that we want in place. That opinion, that perspective, those structures are the things that we need to install and need to work with our task force members to uplift to the Board of Supervisors. People are interested in election reform beyond what's on the task force's plate, and that's great. If this particular task force is not the place necessarily for that, we are actually doing a lot of work around City of LA stuff related to this. And so, keep in touch with me if that was a question that you were answering. My name's Godfrey. How do we see impact of big money in this election? These are policies. What are the campaign finance policies that you want to attach to the elections for this position? Those are things, those are policies, right? We can determine what caps are, what limits are to donating to something. We can determine all of these rules. And it may not be like through the task force level. We got to figure out what is the right level of government. But these particular rules around like whose money gets to be involved, we got to figure that out before we have our first election around all of this. Do other counties have this? They do. It does exist. You got a list there. What's the pay? They need to provide recommendations for that too, right? Like, again, everything's being figured out through these task forces. If you have thoughts, the task force is the place to start bring these thoughts. Will this appointed CEO position be eliminated? And it seems like there's going to be some shuffling is what will happen. Shuffling of tasks, and perhaps that is something that to watch out for in the process. Like, what remains with appointed, what moves to elected, what moves to BOS, right? Like, what is the shifting of all the different functions? When do we anticipate people beginning to announce their candidacy? I said this earlier. Oh, some people said as early as September. Ooh, okay. Soon, I guess this is a big role. So I bet people will be jumping in, which means we need the rules now. We need the rules for this role and the elections. How will people find out more about this? I saw on, I think it was V's slide, we need to build the public megaphone for this. That's part of the reasons why the RLA coalition here wanted to start socializing this with more and more people. I think, it's going to appear on our ballot in 2028. I think the media will pick it up then because it will be a new election. But if we are interested in people finding out about this now so that they shape the policies, that has to happen based on the timeline that you saw from Jackie earlier. A timeline that says that by the end of September, our Board of Supervisors will be voting on the rules and guidelines around this, which means the time to plug in is now for us as a public to shape the rules that govern all of this. I think those are all the questions that came through on the document. Thank you for everybody who answered all of those in real time. Would love to open up to any of our facilitators to maybe elaborate on any of the responses.
Yeah, I mean, I also just looks like Robin has a question, then Isaiah also had a question that I wanted to go to.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Godfrey, for going through these. And something that I wanted that as we were thinking about shaping this presentation, what we wanted to share and what an outcome was, we thought like what can we share with people that's different from what you might be hearing by just reading the news or by Googling. And when I look at headlines or when I've heard headlines, like all I hear is like, this is going to be a really powerful position and, who's going to be throwing their hat in the ring. The difference here is that like we really want to be clear that there's a lot that hasn't been totally decided yet. And so there's really strong opportunities for us to get engaged and get involved. And we like really want to support and empower and work with you all to be a part of engaging in the process. And that I think is what we hope that you walk away from this with, that there are more opportunities to make sure that other people know about this and that there are opportunities to really engage and influence the process throughout these next few months. Before that, before we end, I would love to go to Isaiah, who had a question earlier on, if you're still here, Isaiah.
Yeah. So my question was more about just the measure G really, and the I know Godfrey, you were expressing like, oh, like making sure that more people know about this. I think there's like a lot of misconception, especially with young people. Like I'm 24 Gen Z, and I think because of and be to be frank, because of the publicity with Mayor Mamdani in New York, a lot of people are wanting that same change in the mayoral race here, but also don't realize that there is a huge it kind of reminded me of like this is kind of like a mayor of New York in a way of just how powerful this position can be for all places in LA County. And so I already filled out the form of like wanting to get involved and more than happy to help with like push that because I really want to get more into politics and help my community and everything like that. But so that's why I was wanting to say like what is the initiatives being taken right now to kind of educate especially younger people who are like again seeing NYC and they're like, oh my gosh, like I want a mayor like that. And then they're so busy on the mayoral race that they forget this whole election and then it kind of gets pushed under the rug or it doesn't get on their algorithm. Um, and yeah, because I feel like the more I talk to young people, it's like, and what I see on forums and social media, it's really about the mayoral race. But this position, I just really found out today about it. So yeah, just wanted to ask more of that question, especially engaging with young people and everybody else who may not know about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of how we're trying to amplify and, sort of raise the megaphone is by figuring out what that looks like on our end, and then also how we encourage the county to be more vocal and let folks know, but that like also sometimes government is not giving information to folks in ways that are most accessible and in ways that actually reach our communities. And so that's part of what we're doing is trying to get this info out there. If you signed up, that's awesome, and would love to keep talking to you about what that looks like with this engagement. Yeah, thank you so much. Liked your comment that you're posting in the message about like, how did I just hear about this? Saw you as Anonymous Rabbit in there. So Robin had asked a question in the chat. I know we are at time, but maybe just like 2 more minutes. Robin asked a question in the chat, and then we had Gustavo and then Godfrey not this Godfrey, but I think someone else. Okay, Robin, you had asked about sheriff.
Yeah,
relationship
when you went by
oversight.
really early, it didn't seem like the sheriff was really under their purview. And when I was asking the question, what would make you feel safe? One of my biggest interactions with the Board of Supervisors was in the Sheriff Oversight Commission and the fight to have what they said be meaningful. And so I'm wondering will this person have no effect on that, or is there a way that they interact in which they would have some effect on the Sheriff's Oversight Commission?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that right now. I don't know if anybody else does. It's like an independently elected position, and from what I understand, while they'll have oversight over other appointed positions, they won't have oversight over elected positions, certain elected positions. But if anyone else on the board wants to answer that question, please do. It looks like Shadi, you might have taken yourself off mute. And so we can, Godfrey says the Board of Police Commissions may.
I was answering a different question.
Oh, go ahead.
that someone
Okay,
had in there.
Robin, we can follow up with you about that. Gustavo?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the presentation. I guess for the sake of time, I'll probably just include this in the form too. But I guess more of my question was, I remember when Measure G was on the ballot, one of the main points was that this wouldn't raise any new costs, right? Like at least the implementation costs, not the ongoing salaries and so on. I guess my question is like, what would how would this new CEO be set up alongside the new legislative analyst? And I believe there was a budget department that was also being created. Like, what's the thought process of using existing resources from current departments? And, is the chief executive office that it currently exists now going to transition into that, for example?
I can quickly answer, Gustavo. Those are the exact questions that the task force is grappling with about right now, because yeah, you're right with there's no cost for the initial implementation of the GRTF and getting all that. But later on, then all those costs, they're trying to figure out where's that money going to come from. How is it going to impact, is it going to come from the taxpayers? I mean, so all those are questions that the task force are, some of those points where they themselves are going to need to look into. And then part of those recommendations will go to the Board of Supervisors. So all of that is a process. We are hearing some of those conversations, and so those questions kind of are being raised when they're meeting. So you are spot on with asking the questions, but we don't have answers to that yet. They don't have answers to that yet themselves.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Jackie.
And then Godfrey?
Yeah, yes.
Before we
Just like
close
one
out?
final thought. People are asking like, who does this for the county? Like, or who's doing, like, what are the opportunities for the task force? And this is separate from M. Jody's question about LA City. That's a different body, different everything. But for this county task force particular piece, assume no one is my advice to us. Like, we're here because we are interested not just in learning, but doing something about learning. And if we don't have the answers, let's go get them. And we do that not by asking ourselves necessarily, but let's go meet with the people who would either have better answers or who can help us understand that there is no answer. We should be meeting with all the task force members. I can't name for you all the task force members. That's on me. And so let's do that together. Let's be so familiar that we can rattle them off like very, very easily. If someone was asking about who's doing this for Gen Z, let's assume no one is. Let's do that. What is the Gen Z version of today's conversation? What platforms is it on? What campuses is it on? I think that's up to us. Unfortunately, the task force will have limited bandwidth no matter how well intentioned they are. And if we want different people to be showing up to these things, that's on us. And we could be disgruntled about that because why is it on us? And it is also our power to be able to have it come to fruition as well. So just want to put that out there. Would love to work with folks, as V was saying, on yes, like let's do the thing that we are the ones we are waiting for. The thing that people say, yes. I'll pass back to V and Jackie to close out.
Wow.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Oh gosh, no, just want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, for the great conversations, for the interaction, for all those that helped with answering the questions, including the task force members that were here. Thank you so much, everyone that collaborated, the team, V, Alejandra, Alton, Godfrey, thank you, everyone. See behind the scenes who left, I believe, but everyone who showed up. We really want you to be engaged, stay engaged, and let's continue this conversation rolling. Because we're happy to put another teaching as the next phase goes, right? So, but we really are working on making space for the community to engage. Now we need you guys to meet us halfway there. So, yeah, last word.
And we would love so much for you to join us for a research meeting with task force members, because like Godfrey said, we start by acknowledging what we don't know and we figure it out from there. So if we figure out what we don't know, and that's why we ask these questions, and we can ask some of those questions to task force members, and then we can do another public forum where we're sharing what we've learned with people, because that's not something that you're gonna, again, like learn when you're reading the news or whatever. Like that's stuff that we're gonna learn together. So thank you all so much. I know it's a lot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, Leah, it is a lot. It's very overwhelming, which is today we try to keep it light, but it's impossible to to keep it just light. But we do keep that in mind that it is a lot to digest. I think we can go deeper when we like come together in a work group and just do some of those research. Yeah, definitely a lot.
thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
I'll stop recording.